Good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the Findmypast webinar on starting out with the 1939 register. I'm Estelle Calfe. I'm a family historian at Findmypast. Good afternoon, so I hope you're all sitting comfortably. Hope you've all got a nice cup of tea. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, we've recently launched the most significant record set since the 1911 census exclusively on Findmypast. And in short, this is like nothing that's come before. It's understandable that you might have a number of questions to ask about how the records work and how to get the best out of them. So all the way through this presentation, don't forget there's a box on the left for you to ask any questions that you want to. My colleague Deborah is here. She's another family historian, along with some of the other FMP Findmypast team. And they're on hand to answer your questions. So you can type them as we go along, or you might want to wait until the end of the presentation. So, first of all, what are we covering today? We're going to talk about what the 1939 register actually is. I'm going to show you how to search the 1939 register on Findmypast. From there, I'm going to show you how you can use the 1939 register to start building your family tree and get into family history. And we're going to end with some tips on how to use the 1939 register to get even further into your research and find out some different things other than just about people. So first of all, what is the 1939 register? That's the question on everyone's lips. I've heard this name, the 1939 register, but what is it? What does it mean? It's definitely been something that we're really proud of here at Findmypast, and we've been talking about it quite a lot over the last year or so. The 1939 register is what we call the set of records that were created in September 1939 at the start of the Second World War. This register was used by the government to issue identity documents to the civilian population. It was also used for more than that. It was used to record the population for statistical purposes. You'll see the remnants of that in the sense that certain industries were listed very specifically within the register. It was also used to issue ration books when rationing came into force in January 1940. And most interestingly to a family historian, these registers became the basis of the records for the new National Health Service when it was founded in 1948. This gives us something that no other records have. They turn these snapshots of life, much like a census, into a very unique living document. I'll explain more about this later once we've seen a few records, but in short, this makes the 1939 register one of the most special we've seen, and it certainly will be for a very long time. To really frame these records, I'm going to explain a little more about the timing and process of the 1939 register. The more you know, the better prepared you are to get the best out of what's in front of you. So here's a bit of historical context. The Second World War was one of the most significant events in history. Throughout the mid to late 1930s, events on the European continent became very concerning to the British government. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's policy of appeasement, basically giving Germany what they wanted in the hope that once they were satisfied they would ask for nothing else, only made the Führer Adolf Hitler bolder and war seemingly inevitable. Some historians argue that this was a play for time, and the British knew that war was coming regardless, using this time to rearm. But in preparation for a declaration of war, plans were made to register the population. When war did come on September the 3rd, 1939, only 2 days later the National Registration Act came into force. Every single man, woman and child would be issued with an identity card, and they had to keep it with them at all times. 65,000 enumerators delivered forms around the country, and the occupants of homes filled these in on the 29th of September 1939. A day or two later, the forms were collected and written into books, with the cards issued soon after to the population. So, as I said, these books were filled in by those 65,000 diligent enumerators, and they're what we now call the 1939 register. They've been scanned and transcribed by us here at Findmypast in partnership with the National Archives. So why is the 1939 register so important? Why on earth are people so excited? What sets this register apart from everything else? And why is this register such a big deal for historians, genealogists, and everyone? To answer that, again, we've got to go back to history. As we all know, census records are like gold dust to a family historian. They're that all-important snapshot of life that tells us what life was like for our ancestors and how they lived. In England and Wales, we've got a problem in the 20th century. There's a 100-year privacy rule for records here in Britain, and that safeguards the details of those who may be alive, which is why the 1911 census was the last to be released and digitised by Findmypast in 2011. But the next census, the 1921, won't be available until the 1st of January 2022 at the earliest. Now that's a long time to wait, but there's more to think about here. The 1939 census was destroyed by fire in 1942. Ironically, not as a result of enemy action, but actually by accident. And the 1941 census wasn't taken due to the war. The 1951 census, due to that 100-year rule, won't be released until 2052 at the earliest again. So this gives us two issues, that long wait for information, and also, more importantly, there's a 30-year gap in records where we've got almost no record of the nation. So the 1939 register is the only thing from that period that captures the whole nation in the midst of one of the most transformative events in history. Interestingly, the 1939 register is different from a census in one way that, at least as far as I know, makes it entirely unique as a document, setting it apart from anything else in family history. It's a living document. This means that not only was a snapshot of life taken back in 1939, but because it was used as the latest register in 1948, it was actually continually updated until these registers were replaced by a digital system in 1991. I have to say that when they were updating the register, as you get closer to 1991, this was a little more sporadic. But if anyone you're looking for in the register died in this country all the way up to 1991, we'll be able to see that, and their records will be available for you to view online. We'll talk more about open and closed records shortly. But because this register was updated in this way, not only do we know who died, but females who later married will have their name written with a line put through it, and they only put a single line through, so you can still read their original name. So we've indexed both names so that you can work forwards and see who a relation married, or backwards to find the maiden name of someone who was married at the time you perhaps knew about them. So here's an example. You can see there's an Audrey Morgan living as a daughter of Thomas and Beatrice Morgan. And we can see here that she later married. She became a Kilkiri later in life. So that's even more information that we may not have known. Before we go further, you might have noticed, if you've already taken a look at the 1939 register, that there are black strips on some of the record pages. These are really important to talk about. Take a little understanding. These are what we call closed records. There were 41 million records in the original 1939 register. We've scanned and digitised all of these records, we've transcribed them. But then in order to bring these records to you outside of the 100-year privacy rule, we've had to do something very new. We close the records of every person on the register, opening up all the individuals to view that are either older than 100 years and 1 day at the date of launch, and therefore outside of this privacy rule in the UK, but also then adding everyone who, due to this living document style of the 19 register, we know have died since the register was no longer updated in around 1991. So what we've done is we've cross-referenced these closed records with our own birth and death indexes, opening up a further 2.5 million records. This gives us a very respectable grand total of 30.6 million records available to everyone, and we'll be updating this weekly to add new people who've hit that magical age and lets them add us to their collection, to our collection. Here you can see an example of these people on this page that are closed. Without this process, which is entirely new to family history, we simply would never have been able to bring these records to you before 2039. And with this extra layer of clever technology, not only have we been able to let you see some of it, we've been able to do it long before even the 1921 census. Now, if you do know of someone who's died but would have been less than 100 years old today, there's a process of record opening that lets you prove to us that they're no longer alive. And we will then add that individual to the household on the 1939 register. You do need to provide us with a copy of the death certificate as evidence. When we added the 1939 register to Findmypast, we've enhanced it in a number of ways, making it our most comprehensive record set ever released. So let's take a look and see what we can do. So here we're on the home page for Findmypast. You'll always be able to access the 1939 register by using the glossary of all of our records. This is called the A to Z of record sets. You can see it here, right in the middle of the screen. While the 1939 register is new, you'll also be able to get it at all times while you're using the site, using the navigation at the top of the screen. Here you can see we've highlighted the button, and this takes you to a landing page that we created for 1939 that can give you a little more information, and it lets you start searching straight away. It's a really simple, uncluttered, basic search. It's good for the curious. But if you do want to use perform more of an advanced search, there is somewhere that I can take you. So at the top there, on the top right, you can see a tab that says Advanced Search. This will take you to the custom search screen for the 1939 register. This is also the same search screen if you'd gone through our A to Z of record sets that I mentioned earlier. This has all of the unique search fields for the 1939 register that really make sure that we've got the right person before we unlock a record. So, as I said at the start, what I'm going to do is show you how to start using the 1939 register to build your family tree. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look for my dad, Richard Howes, and his year of birth, which was 1939. I also know the exact date that he was born, which was the 16th of May. So I could enter those details as 16 for the day and then 05 for the month to really narrow my search down, because name and date of birth is usually quite a unique identifier. Now this is great news for those of you that have got John Smith in your family tree. Of 1939 with an exact birth date of the 16th of May, we'll search for the 16th of May in 1937, 38, 39, 40 and 41. If years, it'll be a search between the 31st of December 1941. So we searched for my dad using the date of birth, and it's given me one result. So let's click on the preview button. So when I hover over the preview button, it tells me that I'm about to see a free preview of this record. Now, if I already have a subscription, a 12-month subscription for Findmypast, this does include the 1939 register, and I won't see the preview, I'll just go straight to the record. Now here I've been using some credits, so I see a preview of the page. Now this is really helpful because what it does is it gives me the name of one other person in that household, which helps me decide if I found the right person. Now at the bottom here there's a link which I just want to quickly point out. This is to various forms, and this includes the one where you can request to open a closed record. So do you remember we talked earlier where we said if you knew someone had died and the record was shown as closed, you can fill out this form, send a copy of the death certificate through, we will check the details and then subsequently open the record if everything matches. So now I'm going to unlock this record. And at this point, if I'm not already signed in, I'm prompted to register or sign in with my Findmypast registration details. And as I said, I'm using some pay-per-view credits here. So there's a confirmation page asking if I want to spend the credits, and I can opt out of this if I want to by ticking the box. So now I can see the complete transcript on my screen. This gives me details of all of the household members, including their full dates of birth and occupations. Now, I do know that this is definitely my dad because I can see my grandparents on there. I recognise their names. But the 1939 register transcript page doesn't just give you the transcript. It gives you a lot of other things if you scroll down. So let's scroll down and see what we've got. So the first thing we come to are the maps. Maps have always been one of the most useful things in family history, and indeed in all forms of history. It's important to understand where your ancestors lived. The 1939 register captures Britain on the brink of one of the biggest changes in modern history. So we've given you 3 different maps covering over a century and letting you move from year to year with some very clever navigation. So just below the household transcript, you can see this section with the maps, which is where his parents. Now this is where it gets really clever. The records are geolocated to display maps of the local area. There's some simple to use navigation over on the left hand side, so you can zoom in and out, and you can also go to the full screen view of the map. This is a map from around the time of the 1939 register, and you can see we've even added right in the middle there a little blue marker point to show me exactly the house where my dad was living in 1939. What you can also do is flick between the different overlays, and you can see those there just on the left hand side of the map. You can contrast the same location but at different points in time. So this is a map which is from 1888 to 1913. Now this is my favourite version of the map because it's really detailed. It's got a really comprehensive street and area names detailed there, so it's just great zooming in and having a look around, see how your hometown has changed, for example. You can also view a present day map as well. If we go further down, we've got some very clever infographics which we created. These infographics are custom generated for the household that you're viewing, and they show England and Wales on the day of the register, compiled from the information we've taken behind the scenes to not only show you how your family lived in the local area, but how the nation also looked during that period, so that you can see things in context and really understand how people lived. There are 4 types of infographic that we've included, each with 2 different types. So we've got one for the nation, England and Wales, and one for the local area. So here we're showing you Boston in Lincolnshire, which is where my dad is from. We can see the size of the local community and compare that to the whole to see the differences. The number of households in the area and the nation as well, we've been comparing those. So you can see here the average size per household was 2. The demographics as well, we've got an infographic about that, and this gives you an idea of the split between men and women locally. You can see the age breakdowns. This can tell you whether your area received or sent evacuees, if you paid close attention to the breakdown of the younger people in comparison to the national average, for example. The same goes for the middle few bars, which is able to give you a feel for how many men in that area may be enlisted at the outbreak of war. The final infographic gives you a very special window into the occupations our ancestors had. You'll see locally that perhaps certain industries are more prevalent, mining in particular areas, for example, or that areas had local trades. This compares to the nation, which we see straight away. There are a great deal of manual trades, which we just really don't see anymore, with some occupations that have almost entirely disappeared. I don't think I can name too many modern typists, for example. As you scroll further down, we've also added photographs to each record, which gives you some more historical context. There's a mix of scenes from daily life, special occasions, and the preparations for war. These pictures were chosen based on the age, gender, and location of the person that you've been looking for in the register. There are over 1,000 of these images, and they've never before been seen online. They've been digitised by us, and we use them from the Trinity Mirror archive. It really is a unique window into life. Here we can see medical examinations for those men who were ready to be enlisted. It's interesting to note that for every examination, sure of any observations, each man had to pass through the hands of 5 separate doctors. We've also added some newspaper articles. These are included with the record at no extra cost. In fact, all of these features are all included in the 1939 register. Again, these have been chosen and generated based on age, gender and location, and they just help to give you a more valuable context, showing you the stories that your ancestors might have talked about around the dinner table, for example, the people that they might have known of, and the types of lives that they may have led. So it really does help you just get a really good picture of what life was like for your family during 1939. Here's one example about a Stepney woman who made 10 shillings in one day by providing a service to queue and collect ration books and identity cards for other people. We give you a little more context in the form of historically relevant articles that can give you the background too, and that will help you to understand these records. But the most important part of this transcript really is the link to the original image of the register itself. So let's take a look at that, shall we? So this is the 1939 register image. This is what it looks like, and here we've highlighted at the bottom my dad in the register. Now this really is quite special to me because my dad was just very young. He was born in 1939. He was just a few months old. So it tells me he's under school age. I can see he's living with William and Nadine Howes, and I know that they were his parents. At the top right of the image viewer, there's a button to start your family tree. If you have already got your tree on Findmypast, then that button will say attach it to your tree. So I'm going to start my family tree, and that takes me to this screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my dad's details that I found on the 1939 register. So I got his first name, his last name, I've got his full date of birth, I know where he was born, I've also added his death details. And that creates my tree. So in the register, it also gave me the details of my grandparents. So again, I got their names and I got their dates of birth. So I'm going to add those. So I'm adding my granddad. Again, I know when he was born. I also know when he died. I then go on to add my grandma. And the register gave me her name and it gave me her date of birth. Now I have to say at this point that the date of birth is really, really useful. Now usually when you are starting out with your family history, it's great to go off and order certificates because this sort of gives you lots of information. So the birth certificate, for example, obviously gives you the date of birth. Now, normally, in order to do that, you would search for someone on Findmypast. You would find their birth registration. You would then use those details. You would go off to another website called the General Register Office. You would order a copy of that certificate, and each birth certificate costs £9.25, and that gives you the names of the parents, and it gives that person's date of birth. Now we've just got that all in one go on one page in the 1939 register. So I've added my dad, I've added my grandparents, and here you can see them in the tree. Now, as if by magic, some hints have appeared against them. So this means that we think we found these people in other records on Findmypast. The white numbers in the orange circles, which we've highlighted there with a green circle, indicate how many hints to records there are for each person. So it's telling me there are 3 hints with my granddad. So I'm going to click on the orange circle by his name in the tree. Now this takes me to the hint page for my granddad, and here we can see a description of each of his 3 hints. So I've got one for birth, one for marriage, and one for a death. So I'm going to review the birth record hint. So this will take me to a screen which gives me a side-by-side comparison of the details that I've already added to my tree about my granddad and the information in the record which is a possible match. Now this is going to help me decide if they're the same person. There's also a link at the top there to go and view the transcript to see the actual record. So I'm going to take a look at the transcript. I can see my granddad's full name and his year of birth, and it also tells me that he was in Boston in Lincolnshire. There's also a link to go and view the original image, which the link is on the transcript. So I'm going to do that too. And then in the top right hand corner of the image there's an option to attach this to my tree. So I'm going to I think that is the right person, so I accept the hint. And the next screen, first of all, it tells me that the record I've just looked at has already been added to my tree. So we've done that for you, don't need to do anything. It also gives me the opportunity to update the information that I've got on my tree about my granddad line by line with details that are in the birth record. So I only had a middle initial for my granddad in my tree, but this record here gives me his middle name of Henry. So I want to copy that over to my tree by pressing on the arrow in the middle there. I've already got a precise date of birth from the 1939 register, so I don't want to copy those details across, but I don't have a place. So I'm also going to copy that. So you can see now it tells me where I've added new information or where I've just updated existing information. So once I've done that and transferred over the information I want to keep, I can see the option to update my tree. All this new information will automatically be added to my tree. You see, it's so simple, it's all at the touch of a button. Now then I'll go back to the hints page, and what I can do is I can filter those hints. So I can choose to see any that I've already accepted or that I've rejected, any I'm not sure about, or I can just look at all the new hints. So this is really useful because if you reject a hint, for example, and then you might decide that you want to go back and review it again because you found out something else and maybe it was the right hint. So that's a really useful feature. So I'm now going to review the marriage hint, and the details do match. I can see that they've got my grandma's first name, Nadine, but most importantly, this record now gives me her maiden name. Again, I'm going to go and view the transcript, and what we do with the marriage records is we do some really clever matching, and we call it Marriage Finder. And what this does, it will give me the name of the person that William House married. So here you can see it highlighted in the middle in green. For marriages that took place after March 1912, we will show the exact spouse. For marriages before then, you will get a choice of two names, but this really does help you to narrow down your search. Again, I'm going to look at the original image, and this is just to make sure that the details have been correctly transcribed. The details of my granddad's birth and marriage have now been updated after I've accepted those hints and merged the details. And you can see just how easy it is to start to build up a picture of your ancestor's life. Once I accept hints and add more facts to my relatives, then new hints will start to appear. I now got some hints with the census returns, and the first one that I can see is a 1911 census hint for a William Henry Howes who lives in Boston, Lincolnshire. This matches the location of my granddad's birth and his marriage, so I'm going to take a look. I'm reviewing a hint. I'm now reviewing this hint with the 1911 census, and at the top there it does give me the address, which is 15 Tattershall Road. Now I was really lucky because my granddad lived until he was 96 and used to talk to me lots and lots about his family, and I can always remember him telling me that he lived at 15 Tattershall Road. So I know that this is the right hint. So I'm going to scroll down just to see what else it's giving me, and it's also showing me the name of my granddad's parents who are in the 1911 census with him. So I'm going to accept that hint and go through to the merge screen. So this is where I'll choose which details I want to add to my tree. So I've got my dad in my tree, I have my grandparents, but I don't have my great-grandparents yet. So what I'm going to do is click on the Update All button at the top there. This is going to create a new person for each entry on the census, and it's going to add all of those details that I've selected to my tree. This will include the year the person was born, and their occupation. I'm also going to look at the transcript for the record. So this can show me who was in the house in 1911 and where they lived. You can print this out as well, which is always good to keep it for your own records. This is the actual image for the 1911 census. The link to view that was from the transcript, and I think this is just absolutely wonderful. The images, the census returns, were filled out by the householder. So this image was actually filled out by my great-granddad, and I just think that's absolutely amazing. Now this census will also give me a lot of information, which is really, really useful. Information that hasn't appeared in previous census returns. So if you look now, you can see there's my granddad's signature and the full address. It's giving me the names of everyone in the house. It gives me their ages. You can see it says that my grandparents were married, and next to that it tells me how long they've been married. Then at the bottom it tells me how many people were in the house. So there were 2 males and 1 female. It also tells you how many children they had, how many are still living and how many died. So from the 1911 census, I can see that my great-grandma had 3 children, and sadly 2 of those died. So, as I said earlier, when I merged the census hint, it added those new names to my tree. And as you can see, through using these hints, my tree is starting to get quite big already. Using hints is a really quick and easy way to get started with your family tree. The hints are very helpful. They'll give you matches with all of the records in our birth, marriage and death records, and also with our census records. Now, our birth, marriages and deaths do include parish records, so you will even find hints going back several hundred years. Really is a fantastic tool. It's great for people getting started in family history. It's also great for people who've already been building their tree, and just to find out even more and to see really the breadth of records that we've got. Now, as well as using hints, I also really love search and it really is quite amazing what you can find in there, and I could honestly spend all day happily searching them. In the past, I've come across inquest reports, I've found a copy of a suicide letter, I've found the details of an ancestor who was in a coal mine accident. The newspapers, they really help add context to your family history and just bring your ancestor's story to life. Now, I was really lucky, and I've actually managed to find a report about my grandparents' wedding, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. I love the description of my grandma's outfit, and it tells me about the bouquet she carried, who her bridesmaids were. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I've never seen any photos of my grandparents' wedding. I don't even know if photos exist. So this is just wonderful for me to see this description and just, you know, imagine what their day was like. So we're now going to go back to 1939, and we've covered all the basics. I've shown you what the 1939 register is, what you get with it, how it works. We've used it to start building our tree, but now it's time to get really clever and explore how we can really call ourselves 1939 experts. So I'm going to show you the little tips and tricks that I hope will really help you get the most out of this fabulous record set. So first of all, we're going to cover searching by address. Of course, the 1939 register is relevant to us from a family history perspective, but it's also really useful for other things too. Let's start by searching by address. This is a great way to find out the history of where you live. For example, if your house was built before 1939, just see who's in there, see what they did, see who the neighbours were. This is also a good way to find people whose records might be closed. If you knew where they were living, look for that place by address. You can see here that we're on the individual search screen, so if you remember earlier, we looked at the advanced search screen. Okay, sorry about that. We think we lost this just for a little while. So I'll just start again here on the address search. When you click on address, the search fields will change. What we've done is we've made them more relevant area-based ones. You'll see county, country, district and street. Enter as many or as few details as you like here. So let's just go over again, just to make sure you've all seen that, how we find the address search. So we are on the advanced search screen for the 1939 register. If you remember, we saw that in the beginning. We've got a toggle at the top there for person and address. So we're going to choose the address one, which takes us here where we see the area-based search fields. So what you can do is you can add a street, and then you can filter it down by borough and county. As with all searches, less is definitely more. So you can add more if you get too many search results, but with this many ways to get the right record, we don't think you've ever had a better chance of getting things right first time. I've entered Stepney Way as the streets I want to search for. I've also gone to the field below that under area, and I clicked on Browse County and then typed in London. So you can see I'm searching for Stepney Way in London. I'm then going to search, and this gives me one result. I'm going to click on the addresses button, which will take me through to the street results page, and the address results page rather, and here we can see there are 354 houses on Stepney Way in 1939. So I wanted to look at number 150, and I can see it's the Sussman household who were living there in 1939. Again, I'm going to look at the original image just to have a look at who was living around them as well. So, as I said earlier, we do also have this address search on the 1901 census and the 1911 census. This is really great if you live in an old house, so that you can have a look and see who lived there. So what if your ancestor came from a hamlet or village? We've got some tips on how to help you find them. Once again, we're going to go to the advanced search form. There's a field there called Place Keywords. In this, I'm going to type in G Cross, but you could search for anything. You could add a street, you could add a town, it's entirely up to you. I've gone for G Cross. And when I click search, I can see that 50 people cross. So this means that on the transcript there's going to be G cross is going to be mentioned there somewhere. I want to view the image, and when I look at it, you can see that G cross has been added just below the address there on the left hand side in red pen. Now, what I would say as well is don't forget to go back to the transcript and have a look at the map so that we can see exactly where G Cross was. We've also got institutions in the 1939 register. Institutions can include places such as hotels, prisons and hospitals. On the 1939 image, when you're looking at it, you've maybe already noticed it. There is a column entitled OVSPI. This stands for Officer, Visitor, Servant, Patient and Inmate. So I decided to take a look at His Majesty's Prison Holloway. You can see in the OVSPI column that this page is mainly O, so these are a list of the officers who were at the prison at the time of the register. Then on this page we can see the names of the inmates. You can see I there for inmate. We've recently added the 1939 to the 12-month subscription on Findmypast, and you will see on the image pages arrows. Now this means that you can actually scroll through the register, so you could look at the entire institution. You can read it like a book, which is fascinating. If you are using pay-per-view credits, we will take 60 credits for each view. Occupations also play a big part in the 1939 register. At the time it was taken, the government wanted to understand the specific skill set of every individual so that they could understand their contribution to the war effort, and in the case of heavy manual labour, so that they could ensure that these people got extra rations. What you can do is you can use the advanced search form that we've been looking at, and in the occupation field you can type in something like coal miner, for example. So here we've got 87,850 matches for coal miner in the register. You could change that and put coal hewer, which gives us just over 89,000 matches. You could keep it simple and just type in coal, and here we can see 313,642 matches. So this means that the word coal appears in transcripts over 300,000 times. If you're searching for someone that you believe should be in the register, don't forget that they might have been evacuated and maybe weren't at home when the register was taken. Operation Pied Piper began on the 1st of September 1939, and it relocated 3.75 million people. So it really is worth bearing that in mind when you're searching the register. It wasn't just children either who were evacuated. Mothers were evacuated with children who were under 5. Pregnant women were also evacuated, the disabled, and many teachers and helpers. As we mentioned at the beginning, some of the records are still alive. For example, my mum is still alive, so she won't be in the register. But if they're alive, or maybe we don't know that they've died, then they will be hidden. So if you can't find someone on the register, one tip is to try searching for someone that you know that would be living with them, such as a spouse or a parent. So paying for the 19, as I've said, you can buy a 12-month subscription. We've recently added it to that on Findmypast. That gives you unlimited access to the 1939 register. If you prefer, you can buy pay-as-you-go credits as well. But it really is such a fascinating record set and well worth taking a look at. So let's summarise what we've looked at today. We've given you the background to the register and what makes it so special. I've shown you how to search for people and places. We used the 1939 register to start building a family tree. We've given tips on getting further with the 1939 register. So I'd like to thank you all very much for joining this webinar today. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you all, and I really hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about the register, seeing how you can build your tree, how to use the hints on Findmypast, and I really hope we've been able to help you either get started with your family history or maybe show you how to get further back. So my colleagues have been here really busy answering your questions. We are going to be taking more questions for a while, so please keep asking, and we're going to try and answer as many as we possibly can. Thank you.